They kind of rearranged the stage, getting ready for Christmas. And so I don't mean to be this high above you. I almost want to get down on the floor. Growing up in the South, we were taught to be polite. And manners is a big thing. I think it's a big thing in many households here in Indiana, but in the Southern world, being gracious in all things is very important. We learned at a very early age to how to entertain and how to take people to a place where they felt welcoming, where they could keep their shoes off and just be at home. We learned also to which fork to use and how to do our table manners when we had to. And with my dad, you never knew who he was going to bring home. He would call mom sometimes at 4:30 in the afternoon, and dinner was always at 5:45. And he would call her and tell her that he had so and so with him. And the reason it was at 5:45 is because we had to be done by 6:30 for the Huntley Brinkley report. Anybody remember Huntley and Brinkley? Okay, because Dad was an executive with Campbell Soup Company, and what was happening in the news affected the prices of the things that he was a purchasing agent, and it affected the prices of whatever was going on. So he kept up with world events all the time, and Huntley Brinkley was his source. And so I grew up going, "Good night, David. Good night, Jim. And good night for ABC News." We also learned how to make a bed with hospital corners. Okay? Young people, I want you to know there was something before fitted sheets. Okay? You had to do it yourself. Okay? And to get those done and flat and right took a little doing. But the other thing that we learned to do was write thank you notes. You write thank you notes for everything. If the neighbor brings you cookies, you write a thank you note. If somebody does you any kind of kindness, you write a thank you note. And, just getting handwritten mail at all these days is rare. But I want to introduce you to my nephew. This is Cody Bradford. Cody lives on the south side of Fort Worth, Texas, and he is a baseball pitcher. When he was a senior in high school last year, he's now a freshman, starting pitcher at Baylor. Pitches for the Baylor Bears. But he's unusual to start a freshman when you're playing ball, but he's a left-hander. And it throws batters off when they see a left-handed pitcher on the mound. So Cody, his baseball team won a bunch of tournaments, and when he was a senior, he sent out a thing because their coach wanted them to have skin in the game. They were going to tournaments, but he's like, guys, the school can't fund all this stuff. And he lives in a pretty affluent area, so they probably could have. But they made the guys work for stuff. And they sent out things to people they knew and relatives and stuff and said, hey, we're going to a tournament, can you help us? Okay, kind of like we do with ASB. You send out something and say, hey, can you help me? Well, he sent me a thing and I sent him a check back. And about 10 days later, I get a note in the mail, a thank you note. This is from a 16-year-old. And it said, Dear Uncle Charles, thank you for your contribution to our baseball program. Since this is my senior year, it means a lot to have your support. Love you, Cody. Guys, I didn't think anything about it. I certainly didn't expect a thank you note. But to have that acknowledged felt good. To have that acknowledged just felt good. And this morning we're going to talk just a little bit about living a life of gratitude, because I think it's become a dying art. I think writing thank you notes and just saying thank you for little bitty things is something we just don't do enough of anymore. There was a lady in Chicago that camped out on the steps of the cathedral near one of the subway stations for the L train. And she had a big floppy hat, she put it on the ground and asked for donations for people because she was going through a hard time. And so people would come by, they'd put $1 or $5 or whatever in her hat every day. And then one day she disappeared. nobody saw her. And about 2 weeks went by, and she reappeared on the same step the next morning. And the guys would come by and they'd reach in their pocket for $1 or $2 or something, and she held up her hand to all those that knew her and said, no, you've done enough. Here, have a donut. I want you to know, because of your help, I got a job. I don't need your money anymore. And I came back today just to say thank you.
Praise the Lord.
Just to say thank you. Saying thank you is so important. But yet we just don't do it a whole lot. You know, our scripture today comes from Luke, and it's a story about somebody who was an exception because he went back to Jesus and said, thank you. Read with me, please. It happened as he made his way toward Jerusalem. He crossed over the border between Samaria and Galilee. And as he entered a village, 10 men, all lepers, met him. They kept their distance, but they raised their voices, saying, Jesus, Master, have mercy on us. Taking a good look at them, he said, go, show yourselves to the priests. They went, and while they were still on their way, became clean. One of them, when he realized he was healed, turned around and came back shouting his gratitude and glorifying God. And he knelt at Jesus' feet. And he was so grateful. And he couldn't thank them enough. He was of the Samaritan. Jesus said, were there not 10 healed? Where are the 9? Can none be found to come back and give God the glory except this outsider? Then he said to him, get up and go your way. Your faith is healed and saved you. Your faith is healed and saved you. 1 out of 10 turned around and realized what a great thing Jesus had done for them. So this morning, as we look, I want us to look at a couple of principles of living a life of gratitude. And the first one is this: be grateful even when you are in a difficult circumstance. When you're going through a tough time, you can always find something to be thankful for. I don't know what it is, but you can find something. Even if it's, I remember calling my dad one morning when he was in his mid-80s, and I said, Dad, how's your day going? He said, well, my eyes open, so that's a good start. Sometimes you have to be thankful for the little things. And this is one of the things, in any situation, in any dark cloud, there's got to be something that you can put your finger on, that you can be grateful for. Maybe it's the fact that you've got food in the cabinet. Maybe it's the fact that your lights are still on. It's probably something that you take for granted. Maybe it's the fact you've got family that loves you. Folks, there are folks in this town, probably within a mile of this building, that don't really have family here, or they don't really feel like they've got people they can count on. They don't feel like they've got friends. They don't feel like they've got somebody that is important to them. But if you do, you're lucky. You're lucky. So you have to learn to be grateful in difficult circumstances. As I was studying, go ahead, Mark. One of the things that I brought to mind during Thanksgiving was the story of the Mayflower. And as you're aware, those guys had a tough time in their passage across the land. And the very first year that they had Thanksgiving was 1621. Here's something that you don't know. There were originally 409 people on that ship, and it dwindled down to under 100. Because their first year in America, they dealt with starvation, they dealt with diseases they'd never been used to, they dealt with climate they weren't used to, and they were having to make it off the land. Of the 18 families that came over on the ship, 16 of the 18 families lost either the husband or the wife, or both. Only 2 families, when they had that first Thanksgiving, were still completely an intact family unit. Yet those single parents, yet those people whose children were still there, found some reason to be thankful. To be thankful. And they had the first Thanksgiving. If you look at the historical records, you'll find that the number of Indians that attended that first Thanksgiving were over double the amount of pilgrims that were there. Simply because the Indians knew how to make it a little bit better. But they were thankful. So when we observe Thanksgiving, when we look at going into the holidays, we're about to start Christmas emphasis. There are things that we can be thankful for, even in difficult circumstances. The psalmist David wrote that God comes and he takes me through the valley of the shadow of death. And I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Your rod and your staff comfort me. But the first part of that verse has always given me comfort because it says, I will go through the valley of the shadow of death. I'm not going to stay there. I'm not going to park there. I'm going to go through it. And if I can go through it, with your help, God, I can make it to the other side. I don't know where you are, and I don't know what your life circumstances is today. But there may be something either currently in your life or in the future. And you need to just take this and file it away for that dark moment when you feel like you don't have any hope. Because even David realized that God was there to take us through to the other side. And that makes all the difference in the world. The second thing we need to look at is being grateful for God's goodness. We may not be grateful for things, but we can always be grateful for the things that God provides for us. And so we need to understand that sometimes without Jesus, without the Lord in our lives, we'd be totally hopeless. He's the one that provides the sun and the wind and the rain. He's the one that provides the things that feed us and the jobs that we have and everything else. And He indeed is our source. The difference between grace and mercy. You know the difference between grace and mercy? The difference between grace and mercy is grace is giving you what you don't deserve. Getting you what you don't deserve. Mercy is not getting what you do deserve. Not getting what you do deserve. And God extends His grace and His mercy to us, helping us with the things that we don't deserve, but also withholding punishment for the things that we do deserve. And if for no other reason, be grateful for His goodness in that respect. Ephesians 3:20 also says that He can be our source. Because it says that God can do anything, far more than you could ever imagine or guess or request in your wildest dreams. He does it not by pushing us around, but by working within us. His Spirit deeply or gently within us. When we are one of His, God's Spirit gets in us and it stirs and it changes us. One of the reasons that we are to pray, and sometimes when we pray earnestly, is not necessarily that it changes God. It changes us. It changes our heart. It changes our perspective. And when we put all on the altar and ask Him to come into our lives and come into our situation, it changes us. Because His Spirit is deeply and gently moving within us. The third thing we need to look at this morning in living a life of gratitude is to show thankfulness with action. Jesus wasn't about entitlement. He wanted people, time after time, when He did miracles, when He did other things, He wanted you to do something. Some physical action in order to get the blessing. And Matt, we have a Luke when you pull the 14th verse out of our scripture, they went, but while they were on their way, they became clean. That's what the scripture says. Jesus took them and he said, go and show yourselves to the priest and be healed. They weren't healed right that second. It was while they were walking to the priest. While they were walking, they looked down and the rashes and sores on their arms started to heal. And the tips of their fingers that had fallen off because of their dead, rotting flesh started to come back again. And they could feel a difference in their faces. And they could feel a difference in everything they were doing. Because as they walked, as they took the step of faith, their healing began. You know, leprosy was a really tough disease. Even now, in some third world countries, they still have leper colonies. And they put you out in the outskirts of town. Leprosy basically is it's a skin disease where your flesh starts to rot. And it starts off, it's probably one of the grossest things you can have. But it starts off as a rash, and then your skin boils up, and then hunks of it start to come off. And over time, your fingertips and toe tips come off. You can actually lose fingers and toes and entire limbs. And if untreated, it can drag out as long as 30 years to kill you. It's really contagious. And back in the Old Testament, the people that had leprosy were banned to a leper colony out past the city gate. And they were required to do two things. Number one, they had to attach bells to their clothes so that every time they walked, you could hear the jingle of them walking. And the other thing is if they saw you within 100 paces, they were required to call out, unclean, unclean, so you know they were a leper. So you wouldn't go anywhere near these people. They lived in these colonies, and they watched their bodies completely disintegrate. And there was no cure back then. There wasn't anything they could do about it. Beth Moore, in one of her most recent books, talks about being in Africa and being near a leper colony. And she told the people that were leading the tour with her, that I've never been to a leper colony and I really want to go. And as they approached the leper colony, the stench of the odor of the rotting flesh just overcame them. And they got almost to the gate, and she said, I just couldn't go in. She said, I wanted to go in and minister to those people, but I couldn't overcome the smell. I just couldn't go in. And she talks in her book about the guilt she had for not having enough love like Jesus to go face these people. So when they were walking and their bodies began to be restored, and this was significant. This was a big deal. And they became clean. And this one guy didn't even make it to the priest because on the way he realized what had happened. And he whipped around and went back and fell at the feet of Jesus. So when God asks us to do stuff, sometimes it causes you to be thankful, but there's some kind of action. If somebody does you a kindness, do something for somebody else too. Okay? And I'm not talking about re-gifting at Christmas. Okay? Oh! Has anybody remember re-gifting at Christmas time? Okay? I'm talking about doing something different. Okay? But the second action that it leads us to sometimes is just a spirit of worship. Because when you get on your knees and when you are driving down the road and when you're standing at the sink washing dishes and you are in a spirit of worship and a spirit of praise, thanking Him for all that He's done, it just makes you want to worship. And it leads to praise. And God works through that. He works through that because He hears it. Paul and Silas were hanging in the Philippian jail. It's midnight. Paul looks over at Silas and says, Silas, you awake? Yeah, I'm just hanging here. He said, let's sing. Paul, it's midnight. Now, come on, let's sing. And they started singing at midnight. They were in a cold Philippian jail, shackled to the wall, and they couldn't do anything. But they started singing. And in that singing, it caught the ear of God. And you know the story. The walls began to shake, the shackles fell off of them, the doors came open, and they walked right out of the jail. But it was because of the action they took. They started it, and God finished it. These lepers started the action, and God finished it. So it leads to an action. The fourth thing that we see in living a life of gratitude is that a lifestyle of gratitude creates a lifestyle of wellness. And you say, well, gee, Charles, that's kind of interesting. You see, studies have shown time after time that people that face dreaded diseases actually live longer and fare better because of their attitude. If they give up and throw in the towel, you know, the disease takes over and consumes them much, much faster. And if they're going to have a healing, if they're going to make it longer, a lot of it has to do with their attitude. Well, when you analyze these, go to the next one, man. Jesus told them to arise and go your way because your faith has healed you and saved you. And saved you. Go to the next one. You see, when you narrow it down to the Greek, the first phrase, it says, weren't there 10 cleansed? Jesus was using this cleansed, and the word he used there was kathrizo. Okay? It is the root word for our word catheter. Okay? Anybody know what a catheter is? I heard 3 guys groaning. Okay? The catheter is designed to remove impurities. Okay? It removes impurities from the body. So when Jesus said, weren't there 10 cleansed, their impurities had been removed. But then when he goes back to this one guy that came back, and he said, arise and go your way, your faith has healed you and saved you. That was a different Greek word. He used the word sozo, which means to save and rescue. It's the same word that Paul used later in the New Testament when he was talking about being rescued from a shipwreck. It was the same word used in Matthew when it says that Jesus has come to save the world. They used sozo. So what this indicates is that the 9 lepers got cleansed and got healed. But that 10th one, because he came back, got something more. He got a relationship